I loved them. Let me tell you what that means, truly means. To have felt love so pure and so absolute that it eclipsed everything else, every doubt, every fear, every fragment of the person I had been before the kiss reshaped the architecture of my soul. I loved them with a devotion that transcended reason, that bypassed the rational mind entirely, and rooted itself in something deeper, something primal, something that the creature which infected me had been designed across millions of years of evolution to cultivate in the hosts it claimed. I loved the family. I loved the patriarch. I loved the brothers and sisters who gathered with me in the darkness beneath the hive, singing hymns to the star children who would come to deliver us from the suffering of our existence. I did not know that I was infected. I did not know that the love I felt was a chain. I know now. The Inquisition has explained it to me in the clinical chambers where they have kept me since the patriarch's death, broke the psychic bonds that had held me in thrall for 19 years. They have shown me pics of the creature that kissed me, the Genestealer that pressed its ovipositor against my flesh, and deposited the genetic material that would remake me from the inside out. They have detailed the biological processes that transformed my brain chemistry, that rewired my neural pathways, that made me love my enslavement with a fervor that I had never felt for anything in my previous life. They have helped me understand that everything I believed, everything I felt, everything I did in service of the cult was not choice, but compulsion, the manipulation of a mind that had been colonized by something alien and hungry and utterly indifferent to my existence as an individual being. I understand all of this now. I accept it as truth. But understanding does not erase the love. Acceptance does not silence the part of me that still yearns for the family, that still aches for the belonging I felt in those tunnels beneath the hive, that still hears the patriarch's voice whispering in the hollows of my consciousness, even though the creature itself has been dead for 3 months. They tell me this is normal. They tell me that the psychic scarring takes years to heal, that some hosts never fully recover, that the love implanted by the infection is designed to persist even after the source of that love has been eliminated. They tell me I am lucky to be alive, lucky to have been freed, lucky to have the opportunity to testify about what was done to me. I do not feel lucky. I feel empty. I feel like a house from which everything valuable has been stolen, like a vessel that once contained something precious and now holds only the memory of what it has lost. My name is Kellen Droth. I was born in the underhive of Tertium Majoris, in a hab block so deep beneath the surface that sunlight was a myth, and the weight of the city above was a constant pressure against the architecture of our existence. I was a laborer in the water reclamation facilities, one of thousands who worked the filtration systems that kept the hive's billions from dying of thirst, a number in a ledger that tracked productivity quotas and noted deviations with the cold efficiency of systems designed to extract maximum value from minimum investment in human welfare. I was nobody. I was nothing. I was a component in a machine that did not know my name and would not have cared if it did. And then the family found me. I was 31 years old when the kiss came. I remember the night with a clarity that has not faded, despite the Inquisition's best efforts to help me process and contextualize and distance myself from the experience. I was walking home from my shift, moving through tunnels that I had traversed 1,000 times before, thinking of nothing except the exhaustion in my muscles and the protein paste that awaited me in my hab unit, and the sleep that would prepare me for another shift identical to the one I had just completed. The tunnels were dark. They were always dark in the deep underhive, where power rationing meant that illumination was a luxury reserved for work areas and major thoroughfares. And I did not see the figures that emerged from the shadows until they were already upon me. I should have been afraid. I should have fought or fled or screamed for help that would never have come in those forgotten depths where the Arbites did not patrol and the law was whatever the strongest chose to make it. But I felt no fear. I felt only a sudden and overwhelming sense of peace, a warmth that spread through my consciousness like light through a dark room, a certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, and that nothing bad could possibly happen to me in the presence of these strangers who had materialized from the darkness like answers to prayers I had never known I was praying. The Patriarch's psychic influence had already begun to work on me. I understand this now. The creature could reach out across kilometers, could touch minds that had never encountered it directly, could prepare hosts for infection by softening the psychological defenses that might otherwise have prompted resistance. I had been selected, targeted, groomed for this moment, without ever being aware that anything was happening to me at all. They brought me to a chamber I had never seen before, a space carved into the rock beneath the tunnels I knew, decorated with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe in the light of candles that burned with flames of purple and blue. There were dozens of them, men and women, old and young, their faces bearing the marks of underhive labor, but their eyes holding a light that I had never seen in the eyes of my fellow workers, a joy that seemed impossible in the depths where we had all been consigned to live out our brief and brutal existences. They welcomed me. They embraced me. They called me brother before I had spoken a single word to any of them, and somehow this felt right, felt true, felt like the recognition of a bond that had always existed and was only now being acknowledged. And then they brought me before the Patriarch. I cannot describe what I saw in that inner chamber, cannot find words adequate to capture the experience of standing before a being that existed simultaneously in the material realm and in the depths of my own consciousness. It was vast, larger than any creature I had ever seen, its chitinous form filling the space like a god enthroned in a temple built for its worship. Its eyes, too many eyes, arranged in patterns that my human brain struggled to process, fixed upon me with an attention that felt like being seen for the first time in my entire life, like being recognized, like being valued in a way that I had never been valued by the overseers or the quotas or the machinery that had consumed my days since I was old enough to work. It spoke to me, not with words. I do not think the creature possessed the physiology for human speech, but with thoughts that formed directly in my mind, concepts and emotions that bypassed language entirely and communicated in something older and more fundamental than any tongue humanity had ever spoken. You are welcome here, it said. You are family. You are loved. I wept. Emperor, forgive me. I wept with joy, because no one had ever said those words to me before, because the loneliness I had carried for 31 years was suddenly lifted from my shoulders, because I finally belonged to something larger than myself, something that wanted me, something that saw value in my existence beyond my capacity to meet productivity quotas and consume the minimum resources necessary for continued function. The kiss came next. One of the family, a woman whose face I would later learn to call Sister Myla, approached me with a smile that held nothing but warmth and welcome. She took my hands in hers, and I felt only love, only trust, only the absolute certainty that whatever was about to happen was exactly what I needed, exactly what I deserved, exactly what I had been waiting my entire life to receive. The thing that emerged from her mouth was not her tongue. The ovipositor penetrated my cheek before I could flinch, before I could process what was happening, before any fragment of self-preservation could assert itself against the tide of engineered love that had been washing through my consciousness since the moment the family's hands first touched my shoulders in that darkened tunnel. I felt something enter me, something biological, something alive, something that began immediately to work its way through my tissues toward destinations it had been designed across eons of evolution to find. There was pain. I remember pain. But the pain was distant, muffled, overwhelmed by the psychic reassurance that poured into me from the patriarch's vast consciousness, by the love that held me like a mother holds a child, by the absolute conviction that what was happening to me was not violation, but transformation, not infection, but elevation, not the end of who I had been, but the beginning of who I was meant to become. The kiss lasted only seconds. The changes it initiated would take years to complete. But in that moment, in that chamber, beneath the underhive of Tertium Majoris, surrounded by brothers and sisters I had never met but somehow knew I had always loved, I was born again. I did not know that I was dying. I did not understand that the person I had been was being systematically erased, overwritten, replaced by something that wore my face and spoke with my voice, but served purposes that had nothing to do with human flourishing and everything to do with the hungers of entities that viewed humanity as nothing more than hosts, as vessels, as breeding stock for horrors that would one day descend from the stars to claim their harvest. I knew only that I was happy. I knew only that I was home. I knew only that I loved the family, and the family loved me, and nothing else mattered. Not the world above, not the Imperium beyond, not the future that was being prepared for all of us in the patient darkness, where the star children waited for the signal that would announce humanity's end and their own terrible beginning. Let me tell you what came next. Let me tell you what it feels like to live as a vessel for something alien, to build a life within a lie so perfect that you never think to question it, to discover only after years of devoted service that everything you believed was a manipulation, designed by creatures that viewed your love as a tool and your existence as a resource to be exploited. Let me tell you what happens when you are infected by a Genestealer cult. Let me tell you why I still love them, even now, even knowing what I know, even understanding that the love itself is the deepest wound they inflicted upon me. The changes began slowly, so slowly that I did not recognize them as changes at all. In the weeks following my kiss, I returned to my life in the water reclamation facility, returned to my hab unit and my shifts, and the grinding routine that had defined my existence since childhood. Nothing seemed different on the surface. I still worked the same machines, still consumed the same protein paste, still slept in the same narrow bunk that had been my only private space since I had been old enough to be assigned quarters of my own. The overseers did not notice anything unusual about me. My productivity quotas remained stable. I was still Kellendroth, still a number in a ledger, still a component in the vast machinery of hive survival. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. I felt them with me always. The family, the patriarch, the web of consciousness that connected every infected soul across the underhive in a communion that never ceased, that required no words, that existed as a constant warm presence in the back of my mind, like a fire burning in a hearth I had never known I possessed. I could not hear their thoughts directly, not in those early days, but I could feel their emotions, their intentions, their love flowing through channels that the kiss had opened in my brain, pathways that had been carved by the genetic material, now replicating itself in the deepest tissues of my body. I was never alone again. This was the first gift the family gave me. After 31 years of isolation, of existing as a single point of consciousness in an uncaring universe, I was suddenly part of something larger, a network of souls bound together by bonds that transcended mere friendship or kinship, connected at a level so fundamental that separation itself became an alien concept. When I worked my shifts at the reclamation facility, I knew that my brothers and sisters were working their own shifts throughout the hive, each of us contributing to the survival of the whole, each of us carrying the others with us in the sacred space behind our eyes. When I slept, I dreamed of them, not specific individuals, not faces or names, but a presence, a warmth, a sense of being held in an embrace that spanned the entire hive and reached down into the darkness where the patriarch waited and watched and loved us all, with a devotion that made human affection seem pale and thin by comparison. The physical changes came next, though I did not recognize them for what they were. My skin began to take on a slightly different texture in certain places, a smoothness that had not been there before, a subtle sheen that caught the light in ways that my flesh had never caught it in my previous 31 years of existence. My teeth shifted in my jaw, the enamel thickening, the canines growing just slightly more pronounced than they had been. My eyes developed a sensitivity to low light that made the darkness of the underhive easier to navigate, that allowed me to see the tunnels and chambers where the family gathered, with a clarity that my uninfected co-workers could not match. I thought these changes were improvements. I thought the family's love was making me better. The Inquisition has explained to me since what was actually happening. The slow transformation of my genome, the integration of Xeno's DNA into my cellular structure, the preparation of my body for its true purpose as a vessel for reproduction that would serve the cult's long-term objectives. The Genestealer's genetic material was rewriting me from the inside out, making me something other than fully human, something designed to breed, to propagate, to contribute my altered seed to the great work of establishing a bloodline that would eventually produce more pure-strain Genestealers and expand the Patriarch's domain across ever wider territories. I was becoming a host. I was becoming a breeder. I was becoming a component in a reproductive strategy that had been perfected across millions of years of Xenos evolution. And I loved it. Emperor, forgive me. I loved every moment of it. The gatherings began 3 months after my kiss, when the family deemed me ready to participate in the rituals that bound us together and prepared us for the day of ascension that we all believed was coming. We met in the deep places, in chambers carved from the rock beneath the hive's foundations, in spaces that had been consecrated to the patriarch and decorated with symbols that spoke to the part of my brain the kiss had awakened. There were hundreds of us, sometimes thousands, packed into subterranean cathedrals that echoed with our hymns and our prayers, and the psychic presence of the patriarch that filled the space like water fills a vessel, leaving no room for doubt or fear or anything except the overwhelming certainty of belonging. We sang to the star children. We praised the four-armed emperor. We celebrated the coming day when our patience and our faith would be rewarded with transcendence, when the skies would open and our true family would descend from the heavens to claim us, to elevate us, to complete the transformation that had begun with the kiss and continued with each breath we took, each child we bore, each convert we brought into the light of the family's love. I did not know that the star children were Tyranids. I did not know that the four-armed emperor was a blasphemous mockery of the master of mankind. I did not know that the day of ascension would bring not salvation, but consumption, that the hive fleets we called to with our psychic beacon would devour every living thing on our world, including the devoted cultists who had spent generations preparing for their arrival. I knew only what the patriarch wanted me to know. I believed only what the infection allowed me to believe. This is the cruelty of the Genestealer's design. Not the physical changes, not the compulsion to reproduce, not even the submission to a Xenos consciousness that viewed humanity as nothing more than raw material for its own propagation. The true cruelty is the happiness. The true horror is the joy. The infection does not make you a slave, who knows he is enslaved, who rages against his chains, who dreams of freedom even as he serves. The infection makes you a willing participant, a true believer, a soul so thoroughly convinced of the righteousness of its cause that questioning itself becomes impossible. I was happy in those tunnels. I was fulfilled in that darkness. I was more alive than I had ever been in all my years of grinding labor and lonely nights. And the slow accumulation of despair that had characterized my existence before the family found me. And across the galaxy, I know now, millions of others were experiencing the same happiness, the same fulfillment, the same engineered joy that the Genestealer cults used to transform enemies into allies, to convert potential threats into willing servants, to spread their influence through populations that never realize they are being consumed until the consumption is complete. They gave me a wife. Her name was Sarah, not the sister, Maela, who had delivered my kiss, but another member of the family, a woman whose infection predated mine by several years, and whose devotion to the patriarch was absolute, unquestioning, radiant with a faith that I found beautiful beyond words. The magus who led our congregation selected her for me, explained that the patriarch had blessed our union, that together we would produce children who would carry the family's gift into the next generation and the next, building toward the day of ascension with each birth, each child, each new vessel for the Xenos DNA that was reshaping humanity from within. I loved her. This was not the artificial love of the infection, not the manufactured devotion that bound all of us to the patriarch. Or perhaps it was. Perhaps I can no longer distinguish between genuine emotion and the compulsions that were engineered into me by the kiss. I loved her as a man loves a woman, with tenderness and desire, and the simple joy of sharing a life with another soul who understood me completely, who carried the same warmth in the back of her mind, who saw the world through the same altered eyes that I had developed in the months since my transformation began. We had children, 3 of them across the years of our union. The first was almost human, a boy with subtle marks of his heritage, slight ridges on his skull that could be hidden beneath hair, a cast to his features that might be mistaken for underhive malnutrition rather than Xeno's ancestry. He was beautiful to me. He was perfect. He was the next step in a journey that would culminate in the stars. And I held him in my arms and wept with gratitude that the patriarch had chosen me to participate in this sacred work of propagation. The second was less human. The third, less still. I did not see this as degeneration. The infection would not permit me to see it as anything but progress, evolution, the gradual emergence of something greater than the merely human forms from which it had sprung. My children were blessed. My children were chosen. My children were the future that the family was building in the darkness beneath the hive. And I was proud, so proud, to have contributed to their existence. Sarah believed as I believed. The family celebrated as we celebrated. The patriarch's love enfolded us all, and we were happy, and we did not know, could not know, were prevented by the very structure of our altered minds from knowing. That we were breeding our own replacements, that our children would breed children less human still, that the cycle would continue until pure strain Genestealers emerged from our bloodline to infect more hosts and expand the cult's reach even further. We were livestock. We were breeding stock. We were biological machinery designed to produce more machinery. And we called it love. And we called it family. And we called it the greatest blessing we had ever received. I worked for the cult's expansion without ever thinking of it as work. I recruited new members, identified lonely souls in the reclamation facility who might be susceptible to the family's message, cultivated relationships that would eventually lead them to the tunnels where the kiss awaited. I did not think of this as predation. I thought of it as sharing, as giving, as offering the gift that had transformed my life to others who suffered as I had once suffered. Every soul I brought into the family was another brother, another sister, another point of light in the constellation of consciousness that bound us all together beneath the uncaring weight of the hive above. I was good at this work. The Magus praised me for my dedication. I brought 17 souls into the family across my years of service. 17 lonely workers who found what I had found in the darkness beneath the hive. 17 new vessels for the Patriarch's love. 17 more threads in the web that was slowly enveloping tertium majores from within. I did not know that I was killing them. I did not understand that the gift I offered was a death sentence more absolute than any pronouncement from an imperial court. I knew only that I loved them, and they loved me, and together we were building something beautiful in the darkness where no one else could see. This was my life for 19 years. This was my happiness. This was the lie that felt more true than any truth I had known before the kiss came for me in that darkened tunnel. And I would have lived it until the day of ascension arrived and the Tyranids consumed us all. But the day of ascension did not come. The Patriarch died. And I woke up suddenly and horribly in a world where everything I had believed was revealed as manipulation, and everything I had loved was shown to be nothing more than the hunger of Xenos things that had never cared for me at all. The cult asked more of me as the years progressed. This is how it works, I understand now. The slow escalation, the gradual expansion of what a host is willing to do in service of the family. The careful cultivation of commitment until there is nothing the infected will not sacrifice, nothing they will not surrender, nothing they will not destroy if the Patriarch's will demands it. The infection does not create monsters overnight. It builds them piece by piece, act by act, each small transgression making the next larger transgression seem reasonable, each line crossed making the next line easier to step over. I crossed many lines. I did not feel them beneath my feet. The first killing came in my 7th year of service. There was a man in the reclamation facility, an overseer named Dren Cole, a petty tyrant who had made the lives of the workers under his authority miserable for decades. He had noticed something wrong about me, had begun watching me with eyes that held suspicion rather than the usual contempt he showed for underhive laborers. The Magus explained that Dren Cole had become a threat to the family, that his suspicions might lead to investigations that would expose our sacred work before the day of ascension could arrive, that the Patriarch had decreed his removal for the safety of all who served the Star Children. I did not hesitate. I did not question. I followed Dren Cole into a maintenance tunnel after his shift, moving through darkness that my altered eyes could navigate with ease. I carried a blade that the family had provided, a simple thing of metal and purpose. And when I found him alone in that corridor, I used it without ceremony, without passion, without anything except the calm certainty that I was doing what needed to be done for the protection of everyone I loved. He died quickly. I made sure of that, not out of mercy, but out of efficiency, because the longer he lived, the greater the chance that someone might hear his cries and investigate. I cleaned the blade on his uniform and left his body in a waste reclamation duct, where it would be processed along with the hive's other organic refuse, rendered into nutrient paste that would feed the billions who lived above us, his flesh becoming part of the cycle that sustained the very population the family was slowly claiming for its own. I felt nothing as I walked away. No guilt, no horror, no recognition that I had just ended a human life for the first time in my existence. I felt only satisfaction. I felt only the warmth of the family's approval flowing through the psychic bonds that connected me to the patriarch and to every other soul who served the Star Children's cause. The killing became easier after that. They always say it does. The inquisitors who have studied such things, the confessors who have heard testimony from other recovered cultists, the scholars who have written treatises on the psychology of those who serve the ruinous powers, or the Xenos horrors that infest the galaxy's dark places. The first kill is the hardest. The second is easier. By the 10th, by the 20th, by the 50th, it becomes simply another task to be completed, another service to be rendered, another expression of love for the family that has given meaning to an existence that would otherwise have been empty. I do not know how many people I killed across my 19 years of infection. The Inquisition has tried to help me reconstruct a count, has shown me records of disappearances in Tertium Majoris that match the periods of my most active service, has asked me to identify faces and names from archives that document the missing. I cannot give them the number they want. The memories blur together, the faces becoming interchangeable, the kills merging into a single continuous act of devotion that stretched across years and claimed lives I never bothered to count, because counting would have implied that each life mattered individually, and the infection would not permit me to believe that any life mattered except as it served or threatened the family's sacred purpose. Dozens, perhaps. Scores. Possibly more than 100. I was a murderer many times over. I was a monster in human skin. And I was happy. I was so happy. The preparations for the day of ascension intensified as my children grew. The cult had been building toward this moment for generations. Not just my generation, but those who came before me, the original hosts who had been kissed decades earlier, and whose descendants had produced the infrastructure of faith and fanaticism upon which our congregation now depended. The patriarch was old, ancient by the standards of its kind, and its psychic reach had expanded across the centuries until it touched minds throughout the hive, until its web of influence encompassed millions of souls who did not even know they were being guided, whose thoughts and actions were being subtly shaped by a consciousness that viewed them as nothing more than resources to be cultivated and eventually consumed. We stockpiled weapons. We infiltrated the PDF, the Arbites, the planetary defense systems that might have resisted the Star Children when they finally descended from the heavens to claim their faithful. We mapped the hive's infrastructure, identified critical nodes that could be sabotaged when the signal came, prepared to plunge Tertium Majoris into chaos that would make the world easy prey for the fleet we called to with our prayers and our psychic beacon. I participated in all of this. I was good at it. The cult recognized my talents and elevated me accordingly, giving me responsibilities that extended beyond simple recruitment and occasional elimination of threats. I became a coordinator, a planner, a leader of cells that operated throughout the reclamation district and beyond. I reported to the Magus directly, received instructions that I passed on to brothers and sisters who trusted me absolutely, because the family did not permit distrust among its members, because the patriarch's love bound us all in loyalty that transcended the petty suspicions of uninfected humanity. I was proud of this elevation. I was honored to serve in greater capacity. I did not understand that I was helping to prepare the extinction of my own species, that every weapon stockpiled and every system infiltrated and every plan developed brought closer the day when tyrannid bioships would descend upon Tertium Majoris and devour every living thing upon its surface. The infection would not permit such understanding. The infection showed me only the day of ascension, as the cult's leaders described it. A rapture, a transcendence, a moment when the faithful would be elevated to join the star children in their eternal journey among the stars. We believed we would be saved. We believed we were the chosen. We did not know that the Tyranids do not save. The Tyranids do not choose. The Tyranids simply consume, stripping worlds of all biomass, leaving nothing behind but bare rock and the silence of extinction. My children grew into their heritage as I grew into my responsibilities. My eldest son joined the cult's military arm, training with weapons that would be turned against the Imperium when the day of ascension arrived. He was strong, capable, devoted with a purity that exceeded even my own, and I watched him with pride that no uninfected father has ever felt, because my pride was magnified and channeled and focused by the patriarch's influence until it became something almost religious in its intensity. He would lead soldiers in the uprising. He would strike down the enemies of the family. He would usher in the new age that awaited us all. My second child, a daughter, showed gifts that marked her for service to the Magus. Psychic potential that the infection had awakened, abilities that would allow her to touch minds and bend wills in service of the family's expansion. She was beautiful in the way that hybrids are beautiful to those who share their blood, her features carrying the marks of her ancestry in ways that would have horrified any uninfected observer, but that seemed to me like signs of blessing, like evidence of the transformation that our bloodline was undergoing as it moved toward its ultimate expression. My third child was barely human at all. It, possessed 4 arms and a skull that curved in directions human skulls do not curve, eyes that gleamed with an intelligence that was not entirely his own, a connection to the patriarch so direct that he sometimes spoke with the creature's voice, channeling thoughts from the ancient consciousness that ruled us all. He was a magus in embryo, a leader who would guide the next generation of the cult when the current generation had served its purpose. He was sacred, he was holy, he was proof that the family's work was nearing its completion, that the day of ascension approached with each generation born, each hybrid produced, each step taken toward the apotheosis that awaited the faithful. I loved him as I loved all my children. I loved him more, perhaps, because his transformation was most complete, because he represented everything the family was striving to achieve, because looking upon him was like looking upon the future itself. I did not see a monster. I could not see a monster. I saw only my son, blessed beyond measure, chosen for greatness that I could not fully comprehend. Sarah shared my pride, my devotion, my absolute commitment to the work we were doing together. Our union had deepened across the years, had become something that felt like true partnership, 2 souls bound together by shared purpose and shared children, and the shared warmth of the patriarch's love that flowed through us both, like blood through connected veins. We did not speak of the future beyond the day of ascension. We did not make plans for years that we somehow knew would not come. We lived in an eternal present, each moment complete in itself, each day a gift from the star children who watched over us and would one day descend to reward our faithfulness. The signal came in my 19th year of service, not the signal we had been waiting for, not the psychic announcement that the day of ascension had arrived and the time for uprising had come. A different signal, one that I felt rather than heard, one that tore through the web of consciousness that connected every infected soul on Tertium Majoris like a blade through silk. The patriarch was dying. I do not know what killed it. The Inquisition has theories. An assassin, perhaps, or a rival cult whose patriarch sought to claim our territory, or simply the accumulated weight of centuries finally overwhelming a creature that had extended itself too far across too many minds for too long. What I know is the experience of that death, the sensation of it rippling through the psychic network that had been my constant companion for 19 years. The sudden and catastrophic severing of bonds that I had come to depend upon more completely than I had ever depended upon anything in my uninfected existence. The love vanished first. One moment it was there, the warmth, the belonging, the absolute certainty that I was part of something larger and more meaningful than my individual self. The next moment it was gone, ripped away like a bandage torn from a wound, and in its absence I felt a cold that went beyond temperature, an emptiness that went beyond loneliness, a horror that went beyond anything I'd experienced in 31 years of underheave existence before the family found me. I screamed. Across Tertium Majoris, millions of infected screamed with me, and then the memories began to return, not the cult's memories, not the false narrative of blessing and ascension that the infection had written across my consciousness, but my own memories, the true record of what I had done and what I had become across 19 years of service to something that had never loved me at all. I remembered the killings. I remembered the recruitment. I remembered the faces of the 17 souls I had brought into the family, the lives I had ended, the families I had destroyed through my devoted service to a Xenos horror that viewed humanity as nothing more than hosts to be exploited. I remembered my children. I remembered what they truly were, and I understood, finally and completely, that I had been a monster, not despite my love, but because of it, not in spite of my devotion, but through it, my humanity hollowed out and replaced with something that wore the mask of belonging, but was in truth only hunger, only propagation, only the cold biological imperative of a species that had evolved to consume everything it touched. The patriarch was dead. The spell was broken. And I was left alone, with the knowledge of what I had been, what I had done, what I had helped to build in the darkness beneath the hive. I was left alone with myself, for the first time in 19 years, and I wished, with every fibre of my being, that I had died with the patriarch, rather than surviving to face the truth of what the infection had made of me. Sarah was screaming when I found her. She was in our hab unit, crouched in the corner where we had kept the small shrine to the four-armed emperor that now revealed itself to me as the obscenity it had always been. A monument to Xenos hunger, dressed in the trappings of human faith. Its four-armed icon, a mockery of the Aquila, that true servants of the emperor wore upon their breasts. She was screaming without words, without pause, without any sign that she recognized my presence or understood that I had entered the room. Her eyes were open, but saw nothing, fixed upon distances that existed only within her shattered mind. And the sound that emerged from her throat was not grief or terror, but something older, something more fundamental, the howl of a soul that had been hollowed out and was only now discovering the emptiness that remained. I tried to reach her. I spoke her name, touched her shoulder, attempted to break through the catatonia that had claimed her. But she did not respond, could not respond, had retreated so far into herself that no voice could follow her there. The patriarch's death had affected different hosts in different ways. I would later learn, some, like me, woke to horrified clarity. Others, like Sarah, collapsed entirely, their minds unable to process existence without the psychic support that had sustained them for years or decades. She was gone. The woman I had loved, the mother of my children, the partner who had shared 19 years of false happiness with me. She was gone, and what remained was merely flesh that breathed and screamed, and would not stop screaming, no matter how desperately I called her name. I left her there. Emperor, forgive me. I left her there. I did not know what else to do. The screaming would bring attention, would draw neighbors who might still be infected and might react with violence to the confusion of their shattered faith. I needed to find my children. I needed to understand what was happening. I needed to move, to act, to do something other than stand in that room and listen to my wife howl at the ruin of everything we had believed. The tunnels beneath the hive were chaos. Thousands of infected had gathered in the deep places over the years, had made their homes in the chambers and corridors that the cult had claimed as its own. Now those thousands were reacting to the patriarch's death in every way imaginable. Some screaming as Sarah screamed, some weeping with grief that they could not understand, some attacking each other in confusion and rage, some simply standing motionless with expressions of absolute blankness as their minds struggled to process the sudden absence of the presence that had guided their every thought for years beyond counting. I saw a man I had recruited, Torvin Marsh, a filtration technician I had brought into the family 8 years prior, beating his own head against a stone wall, the impacts wet and heavy, his skull already deformed by the violence he was inflicting upon himself. I saw a woman cradling something in her arms that I realized with horror was a hybrid infant, one of the 3rd or 4th generation. Its 4-armed form now visible to me as the alien thing it truly was, rather than the blessed child I would have perceived before the patriarch's death. She was singing to it, a lullaby that I recognized from the cult's hymns, her voice soft and sweet despite the blood that ran down her face from wounds I could not identify. I pushed through the chaos, searching for my children, calling their names with a voice that cracked and broke beneath the weight of everything I was feeling. I found my eldest son first. He was standing in one of the larger chambers, surrounded by a dozen cult soldiers who had been under his command, his weapons drawn, his face twisted into an expression I had never seen him wear. Not confusion, not grief, not the catatonic collapse that had claimed his mother, but rage. Pure and absolute rage, burning in eyes that had not lost the light of the patriarch's influence, but had instead been transformed by its absence into something feral and uncontrolled. He saw me. He raised his weapon. "You," he said, and his voice was not my son's voice, was something harder and colder and filled with a hatred that I did not understand. "You woke up. I can see it in your eyes. You remembered. I did not raise my own weapons. I did not defend myself. Please," I said, "please. We need to think. We need to understand what's happening. What's happening is that the patriarch is dead, and the day of ascension will never come, and everything we worked for is gone." He stepped toward me, and the soldiers around him moved with him, their own weapons trained on my chest. But some of us didn't wake up, Father. Some of us still believe. Some of us are going to finish what we started, with or without the patriarch, with or without the star children, with or without weak links like you who couldn't hold on to their faith when it mattered most. I understood then what I was seeing. The infection had affected different hosts in different ways. But for some, particularly those who had been born into it, whose entire existence had been shaped by Xenos DNA from the moment of their conception, the patriarch's death had not broken the conditioning, but had instead unmoored it, had released it from the control that had kept it directed toward the cult's long-term objectives, and allowed it to become something wild, something feral, something that sought destruction for its own sake, rather than as preparation for the day of ascension. My son had not woken up. My son was still a monster, and he was going to kill me. The day of ascension was a lie, I said, and I do not know why I said it. do not know what I hoped to accomplish by speaking truth to a mind that had been constructed from birth to reject such truths. The Star Children, they're tyrannids. They would have consumed us all. Everything we believed, everything we worked for. It was designed to make us complicit in our own extinction. He laughed. The sound was not human. You think I care? He asked. You think any of that matters? The patriarch is dead, Father. The web is broken. I can feel the silence where the family used to be, and it's driving me mad. It's driving all of us mad. And the only thing that makes the silence bearable is this. He gestured with his weapon, and I understood what he meant. Violence. Action. The simple clarity of destruction, of having an enemy to fight, of channeling the unbearable emptiness into something that felt like purpose, even if it was nothing more than the death throes of a cult that had lost its reason for existence. I won't let you leave, he said. I won't let you carry what you know to the authorities. The family might be dying, but it doesn't have to die tonight. We can rebuild. We can find another patriarch, or become something new, something that doesn't need the Star Children, or the Day of Ascension, or any of the lies that held us together. But we can't do that if you run to the Arbites and tell them everything you've seen. I looked at my son, my firstborn, the child I'd held in my arms and wept over with pride that I now understood had been engineered into me by the very creature whose death had freed me. I looked at him, and I tried to find something human in his eyes, some fragment of the boy who might have existed if I had not been infected, if his mother had not been infected, if his entire existence had not been shaped by Xenos manipulation from the moment of his conception. I found nothing. There was nothing there to find. I'm sorry, I said. I do not know if I was apologizing to him or to myself, or to the universe that had made such apologies necessary. I ran. They pursued me through the tunnels, through the chaos of the collapsing cult, through chambers where the infected killed each other and themselves, in the madness of the patriarch's absence. I had advantages they did not. Years of service had given me knowledge of passages and routes that even my son did not know, and my mind was clear in a way that theirs was not, unclouded by the feral rage that had replaced the patriarch's guidance in their altered brains. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs screamed for rest, ran until the sounds of pursuit faded behind me, ran until I emerged into tunnels that were not part of the cult's domain, into the upper reaches of the underhive where uninfected humanity went about its business without any knowledge of the war that was being fought in the depths below. I ran until I found an Arbites patrol, and then I stopped running, and I fell to my knees, and I told them everything. I do not know what happened to Sarah. The Inquisition has not been able to confirm her fate. Perhaps she died in the violence that consumed the cult in the hours after the patriarch's death. Perhaps she is still alive somewhere, still screaming, her mind forever lost in the ruins of a faith that was never real. I pray for her sometimes in the quiet hours of my captivity, though I do not know if my prayers reach the Emperor or if he would listen to prayers from something as corrupted as what I have become. I do not know what happened to my children. The Inquisition tells me that my eldest was killed in the purge that followed my confession, that the forces they deployed into the underhive eliminated the remnants of the cult, with extreme prejudice that no quarter was given to hybrids of any generation. I want to believe this. I want to believe that my son, the monster that my son had become, is dead, that he is not still out there somewhere, that he is not rebuilding, recruiting, preparing to spread the infection to new hosts in new cities on new worlds. I do not know what happened to my third child, the one who was barely human, the one who spoke with the patriarch's voice. The Inquisition will not tell me. Their silence suggests that they are not certain either, that something escaped the purge, that the legacy of my 19 years of service might still be propagating itself somewhere in the darkness where such things hide and grow and wait. I told them everything, every name I could remember, every location I knew, every secret the cult had shared with me across my years of devoted service. I held nothing back, offered no resistance, asked for nothing in return except the opportunity to testify, to confess, to speak the truth of what had been done to me and what I had done in return. They did not believe me at first. They thought I was still infected, still loyal, still serving the cult's purposes through some elaborate deception designed to mislead their investigation. They subjected me to tests I cannot describe, to procedures that left scars on my body and my mind, to the attention of psychers and inquisitors and specialists whose methods I was not permitted to understand. Eventually, they accepted that I was telling the truth. Eventually, they acknowledged that the Patriarch's death had broken the infection's hold on my consciousness, that I was no longer a servant of the cult, but a survivor of it, a witness whose testimony might help them understand and combat the threat that Genestealer cults pose to worlds beyond counting. They did not free me. They did not thank me. They simply transferred me to a different kind of cell, a different kind of captivity, where I would spend the rest of my days answering questions and providing information and serving the Imperium in the only way that remained available to someone as tainted as I had become. This is where I am now. This is what I have become: a witness, a confessor, a broken thing that speaks truths. No one wants to hear about infections. No one wants to understand. And still, despite everything, despite the knowledge and the horror and the absolute certainty of what the cult truly was, still I feel the absence of the family's love like a wound that will not heal, like a phantom limb that aches for a body that no longer exists. Still I miss them. Still I love them. And that, more than anything else, is the true horror of what was done to me. 3 months have passed since the Patriarch died. 3 months of interrogation, of testimony, of answering the same questions in different ways for different inquisitors, who hoped that repetition might shake loose some detail I have forgotten, some secret I have buried, some fragment of cult knowledge that might help them combat the threat that spreads unseen across the Imperium's million worlds. 3 months of waking each morning in a cell that is clean and sterile, and utterly empty of the warmth that filled every moment of my existence for 19 years. 3 months of learning to live without the family, without the web, without the constant reassurance that I was loved and valued, and part of something larger than myself. I have not learned. I am not sure I ever will. The Inquisition's scholars have explained to me the biology of what was done to my brain, the chemical alterations, the neural pathway modifications, the systematic restructuring of the regions responsible for attachment and belonging, and the experience of love itself. They have told me that my feelings for the family were manufactured, that the joy I experienced was engineered, that every moment of happiness across those 19 years was nothing more than the product of Xenos manipulation, designed to ensure my compliance with the cult's reproductive agenda. They speak of these things with clinical detachment, with the comfortable certainty of observers who have never experienced what they describe, who understand the infection intellectually, but have no conception of what it feels like from the inside. They do not understand that knowing a feeling is artificial does not make it stop. The love persists. The longing endures. The absence of the family is a constant ache in my chest, a phantom limb that reaches for connections that no longer exist, a wound that the Inquisition's chirurgeons cannot stitch closed, because it exists in regions of my being that no scalpel can reach. I wake in the night sometimes, reaching for Sarah, and the emptiness of the bed beside me is a devastation that 3 months of intellectual understanding has done nothing to diminish. I hear the hymns we sang in the deep places echoing through my memory, and my throat tightens with an urge to join the singing, even though I know now that those hymns were prayers to monsters, invocations of a doom that would have consumed us all if the patriarch had lived long enough to complete its work. I know what the cult was. I know what I did in its service. I still miss it. I still love it. I still want to go home to a home that never truly existed. This is what I have come to understand about Genestealer cults. The truth that the Inquisition's treatises and the Ecclesiarchy's warnings fail to capture. The horror that lies at the heart of this particular Xenos threat, and makes it different from the simple violence of the orc or the cold hunger of the tyrannid swarm. The cult does not enslave you. The cult does not force you into service against your will. The cult makes you want to serve, makes you love your servitude, makes you happy in chains that you cannot perceive, because happiness itself has become a chain, because joy has been weaponized, because the deepest human need, the need to belong, to be loved, to be part of something larger than oneself, has been exploited with a precision that no human tyranny has ever achieved. You cannot fight what you love. You cannot resist what makes you happy. This is why the cults spread. This is why they cannot be stopped through propaganda or education, or the simple exposure of their true nature. The infected do not want to be cured. The infected do not perceive themselves as infected at all. They perceive themselves as blessed, as chosen, as recipients of a gift so precious that the uninfected are to be pitied for their inability to receive it. The cult does not recruit through deception, not truly. The cult recruits through the fulfillment of needs that the Imperium has never learned to meet, through the provision of belonging in a civilization that treats its citizens as resources, through the offer of family to billions who have never known what family means. I was lonely before the kiss. I was empty, purposeless, a number in a ledger that tracked productivity, without ever acknowledging that the productive units had souls. The cult gave me everything I had never known I was missing, and then it used that gift to make me a monster. This is the pattern I understand now. This is the method repeated across 1,000,000 worlds wherever humanity has spread, and isolation has followed in its wake. The Genestealers do not target the strong, the connected, the valued members of society who have networks of relationship and purpose that might resist the cult's promises. They target the weak, the lonely, the forgotten. They find the Kellen Droths of every hive and every world, the workers who labor in darkness without recognition, the souls who have never been told they matter, and they offer them the one thing the Imperium cannot provide. They offer them love. And love, weaponized, is more dangerous than any bolter, any virus bomb, any exterminatus fleet descending from orbit to scour a world clean of life. Because you cannot exterminatus your way to victory against an enemy that propagates through the very human need for connection that makes civilization possible. Because every lonely soul is a potential convert. Every unhappy worker is a door through which the cult might enter. Every moment of isolation is an opportunity for something patient and hungry to whisper promises that the Imperium has never learned to match. I have testified for 3 months. I will testify for as long as the Inquisition requires. But I have come to believe that my testimony will change nothing, that the cults will continue to spread despite everything I reveal, that somewhere in the depths of every hive world in the Imperium, there are chambers where patriarchs wait and plan, and send their children to kiss the lonely ones, the empty ones, the souls who have never been told they are loved. The Imperium does not know how to love its citizens. The Imperium knows only how to use them. And so the cults will find purchase in every place where people have been used without ever being valued, will grow in every shadow where belonging has been denied, will spread through every population that has been taught to serve without ever being taught that service can be reciprocal. I was infected for 19 years. I killed for the cult, recruited for the cult, bred for the cult, helped prepare an apocalypse that would have consumed my entire world if the patriarch had not died before its plans could reach fruition. I was a monster, and I was happy, and the happiness was the most monstrous thing of all. And still, I love them. This is my confession. This is my testimony. This is the truth that I carry in the hollowed-out space where the family used to live, the space that will never be filled by anything the Imperium can offer, the space that aches and will not stop aching, no matter how many times I tell myself that the love was artificial, that the belonging was manipulation, that everything I felt was nothing more than the biological machinery of a Xenos parasite designed to make me compliant. I know what the cult was. I know what I did. I still reach for Sarah in the night. I still hear the hymns in my dreams. I still feel the warmth of the patriarch's love in the back of my mind, a ghost that haunts me, even now that the creature itself is dead and gone. This is what happens when you are infected by a Genestealer cult. They take everything from you. Your will, your identity, your future, your humanity itself. They use you to propagate their species and prepare the way for horrors that will devour your world. They make you complicit in your own extinction and the extinction of everyone you have ever known. And they make you love it. They make you grateful. They make you happy in ways that nothing else has ever made you happy, in ways that nothing else will ever make you happy again. The infection can be broken. The patriarch can be killed. The cult can be purged, and the survivors can be recovered, and the testimony can be extracted and filed in archives that scholars will study for centuries. But the love remains. The love always remains. And that is why no warning will ever be sufficient, why no defense will ever be complete, why the Genestealer cults will continue to spread through every corner of the Imperium, where people are lonely and empty and desperate to belong. Because the Imperium offers duty, the Imperium offers service, the Imperium offers the honor of sacrifice and the glory of death in the Emperor's name. But the cult offers love, and love, even false love, even engineered love, even love that is nothing more than the manipulation of a Xenos parasite exploiting the deepest needs of human consciousness. Love is something that humanity will always reach for, will always accept, will always choose over the cold alternatives that a galaxy of war and suffering provides. I know this because I reached for it. I know this because I chose it. I know this because even now, even knowing everything I know, I would reach for it again if the kiss came for me in the darkness. Emperor, forgive me. I would reach for it again.